One of the biggest mistakes you can make in Dynasty leagues is investing in high-level assets whose production can be replaced at a dirt cheap level from a value standpoint. That is one of the worst mistakes that we make. Now, keeping that in mind, there are some assets that you hold for future production, right? You're holding on to this person. You know, Ted McMillan, he's a top 12 Dynasty wide receiver that averaged 12.5 points per game this year. You're holding Ted McMillan because of what he can produce as, not because of what he did produce as in his rookie year. So you have to keep that in mind. But a lot of times as a contender, if you do that too much, if you keep all of your value and all your cards into players that you are hoping they're going to produce next year, or maybe they're going to produce the year after that, it can end up costing you a Dynasty Fantasy Football Championship. And so you've got to learn how not to do that. And so this exercise is one we like to do every once in a while, where we give you 2 blind resumes and we compare these players at the same position, and you're going to be like, oh, crap. And the point of this video is not to say, oh, you should sell the first player for the second player. You should sell the good player for the cheaper player, because not all these players are sells. And so this is not necessarily a piece of advice. We will give you advice, I think, for each of these and kind of tell you what our thoughts on their dynasty value is and maybe what you should do. But it's not sell this player for this player. That's not what this video is. These are not all true scams either, technically. They're not like, some of these guys are decent investments in Dynasty. What this is a thought exercise, and it's meant to make you think about how you're investing in production versus potential. And there's a good old saying that potential just means you haven't done crap. And so let's get into that, and let's start with a blind resume here. Our first one. This wide receiver average. This is wide receiver. Actually, we're going to do 3 wide receivers here. Okay. Wide receiver A averaged 9.1 fantasy points per game. Okay. Wide receiver A was the wide receiver 56 on the year. Is ranked 21st overall in expert consensus rankings. Averaged 4.3 targets per game, a target share of 13%, 3.3 receptions per game, 46 receiving yards a game, 0.14 receiving touchdowns per game. I'm not going to tell you the other stat because it's going to give it away if I do. Let's go to wide receiver B here, who averaged 13.2 points per game, which is 4 more on a per game basis than wide receiver A. Finishes the wide receiver 22. I didn't even realize he finished as wide receiver 22 this year. That's crazy.
That is wild.
5.5 targets per game, 20.8% target share this year, so 7% higher than player A. 3.5 receptions per game, about the same. 61 receiving yards versus the 46, and then 0.6 receiving touchdowns, which actually was 8th on a per game basis. 12.07 yards per target as well. And so that's wide receiver B. Wide receiver C. 10.1 points per game, slightly higher than wide receiver A. When it finishes the wide receiver 44 this year, okay, is ranked as the wide receiver 86. So this is wide receiver A is the wide receiver 21, wide receiver B is the wide receiver 45, wide receiver C here is the wide receiver 86. Averaged 5.75 targets per game, more than A. 18.7% target share, more than A. 3.56 receptions, more than A. 43.5 receiving yards, the same or less than A. More receiving touchdowns. And so we have all of these blind resumes. Let's reveal who they are.
What about that special metric?
Okay, now here's the special metric. Let's do the special metric. And this is going to give it away. That's why I didn't do it until now. Wide receiver A averages 2.91 yards per route run, which is 12th in the NFL. Wide receiver B averages 2.78, which is 16th in the NFL, another elite metric. And then wide receiver C averages 1.32, which is 106. And so that's where the comparison kind of falls apart. The problem is wide receiver A is being propped up by this one stat. And wide receiver A is Luther Burden. Wide receiver B is Christian Watson, the wide receiver 45. And wide receiver C is Trey Tucker of the Las Vegas Raiders. And when you're comparing all 3 of these guys on the Flock site, the one statistic that Luther Burden has over Christian Watson and Trey Tucker, who are ranked 24 spots lower and 60 spots lower in rankings, the 65, the one statistic that he takes over these guys is yards per route run. And you will notice when you are talking to a Luther Burden truther, which I would consider myself a fan of Luther Burden, the NFL player, a big fan. I was a very big fan of Luther Burden in college, and I thought he was misused his last year of college, and I think he's a great talent. So let's get that out of the way. But if you're talking to somebody who thinks Luther Burden is worth the prices he's been going at in Dynasty recently, which, by the way, we will go on record and saying too high for our liking.
Too high, yeah.
Because I've seen him go at the 4-5 turn. That's way too high, man. The only thing they're going to say to defend Luther Burden is his yards per route run. Because in reality, the raw production statistics from Luther Burden on a per game basis did not come close to anything you want. In fact, you can get replaceable production from Luther Burden's production last year from Trey Tucker.
from Christian Watson, who, by the way, missed a good chunk of time at the beginning of the season from the ACL tear that he suffered from at the end of the previous year. And he still had, I think, more production, actually, because he had like a ton more touchdowns.
He had 132 PPR points compared to Luther Burden's 127. So he was altogether more productive, not even on a per game basis.
Yep.
What does this mean? Well, with Luther Burden, I think the point that can be made here is not sell Luther Burden for Christian Watson and Trey Tucker. We're not telling you to do that. And a lot of people are going to be upset about this. And I'll just be honest with you. All I did right there, the only thing I did was list their statistics. I literally just read what they did last year. So if you're offended by that and you're all in your feelings and your butt hurt, you can go eat at Weenie Hut Juniors, because I think that, and look, and I'll reference it, if you're going to be a weenie, hop in the bun. And put the meme up. If you're going to be a weenie, hop in the bun. They're just the numbers. And it's worth having the discussion, of course, that Luther Burden has way more upside than Christian Watson and Trey Tucker. Of course, he's a way better talent. He's in a better situation than these two by a long shot. The fact of the matter is, there are contending Dynasty teams trying to win Dynasty championships that have Luther Burden, and Luther Burden is currently going at a 4th round price. And I'll tell you right now, if he is a 4th or even early 5th round price in Dynasty, it's league dependent. It depends on your league economy. Every league is different. If that is the price he's at in your league, no.
Yeah, and this is coming from guys who, when Burden was going at the price point of Christian Watson in the middle of the season, we were all over that price, because we're the first to tell you, and we are very aware of what his upside and talent ability is compared to a really true deep threat in Christian Watson, who's a contested catch guy in the red zone.
Yep.
Right? Two totally different skill sets. A lot of Luther Burden's production actually comes from his yak ability, and like none of it is the case for Christian Watson. Actually, Luther Burden had like, I think 3 times the amount of yak that Christian Watson had this season. So there are a ton of positives to like what the floor is for Burden compared to a guy like Christian Watson production wise. But again, this is something that I think is important to highlight. Everyone is pretty much only talking about Luther Burden's yards per route run. And I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit and remind you guys that while there is some really nice efficiency, I guess indications from the yards per route run in terms of like what their potential breakout opportunity could be based on those early on yards per route run metrics, it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that Luther Burden is going to be some elite level asset down the line, because that's a crowded wide receiver room that includes right now DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Colson Loveland and a really good run game. So I'm just telling you right now, like if you fully expect Luther Burden to be the next like elite guy in a Ben Johnson offense, well, I would say it's possible. I wouldn't say it's guaranteed, because there are a lot of other elite upside mouths to feed who could easily end up being the focal point in that offense over a guy like Burden, who is more of a gadget guy. So
for reference here, like he's valued next to T. Higgins right now in a lot of market values. I would take T. Higgins. Like if I'm picking a wide receiver 2, I'm going to take T. Higgins, the guy who's proven that he will produce at a high-end wide receiver 2 level on an offense with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. I know he can do it. Chase Brown is being drafted next to Luther Burden. To me, like why not take the Bengals running back there even? But even some of the other wide receivers, like I mean, I would rather have Rome Odunze than Luther Burden. I would rather have, by the way, I'd rather have Colson Loveland than Luther Burden. I think I feel more confident in Loveland being the focal point of the
Loveland is why I'm scared of Burden and a little bit scared of Rome.
I'm also scared of Rome, but I'd rather bet on Rome than I would Luther Burden. It's not to say Luther Burden's this big sell, but I will say, again, depending on what your league economy is doing with Luther Burden, if he's priced at a 4 or 5 turn level guy, I don't think the production potential, even though we did see a couple really good flashes last year, I don't think what we saw warrants a meteoric rise, a 3-4 round rise like we saw with Luther Burden. And so at that price, Nathan and I are probably both going to be out.
Just because yards per route run is a really, really good sign for a player doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to be an elite level fantasy asset. See Christian Watson.
Dontavion Wicks a couple years ago, same exact thing. And people were saying Wicks was the next Devontae Adams because of the yards per route run. How did that work out for the Wicks truthers? It didn't. Luther Burden is much better than Dontavion Wicks, but it just goes to show you can't use that yards per route run as a crutch
as the only metric.
We have to see the rest of it come together. Luther Burden needs to stay on the field. I'll end by saying that he needs to stay on the field. Obviously, again, it's all different based on your league economies, but if he's priced that high, we're not in on Luther Burden.
Mentally prepare yourself for the comments that are going to come from that little section right there.
Again, we're only stating facts.
Yeah, I know.
There's it's not even an opinion in there. My opinion of Luther Burden is I like Luther Burden. I like the Bears offense. My opinion is that I think it's crowded, and I think that's a pretty strong, I think that's a fact, actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So And look, if you want to hold Luther Burden, you can. Again, Weenie Hut Juniors is right around the corner. It is. Let's keep going.
Next guys we're going to have here are a slew of running backs. 3 guys. We're going to do 3 guys again here. Running back A had 12.9 points per game. Again, just under 13. Good for the running back 23 there. Running back B also had 12.9 points per game. Running back C had 14.5 points per game, which was a mid running back 2. Good for running back 19 compared to the low end running back 2s in player A and B. Player A, when you're talking about rush attempts, had just over 11. Player B had 9, and player C had 14 rush attempts per game. When you talk about rushing yards, 56 for player A, 33 for player B, and 63 for player C. Yards per carry efficiency, this is very important to us, 4.7 for player A. That's very, very good. Player B, not too hot, 3.6. And player C, very solid at 4.4 yards per carry. Another one that I want to look at here is receiving yards. 13.8 receiving yards for player A, 22 for player B, and 22 for player C. Total yards from scrimmage for all these guys. Player A had 67 total yards from scrimmage. Player B had 53 total yards from scrimmage per game. And then player C had just under 80 total yards per game in this offense. When you're looking at all of these guys, again, I didn't want to give away age because that might help narrow it down for you guys, but Travion Henderson is player A. Player B is RJ Harvey. And then our third running back is, surprise, surprise, Jaylen Warren, who was playing with alongside Kenneth Gainwell in that offense.
I almost put Kenneth Gainwell on here,
the
by
receiving, the way. The lead receiver in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense was Kenneth Gainwell this season. All that to say, the fact that Jaylen Warren, from a production perspective, pretty much blew Henderson and Harvey out of the water, it's a testament to what he was able to accomplish in a really, really rough-looking offense all season, but also shows you kind of what the cap ceiling is for offenses that like to run committee-style backfields that are true committee-style backfields. And this is, I think, what we're a little bit concerned about. Everyone knows what Jaylen Warren's ceiling cap is in the NFL.
Sure.
He's kind of not even a change of pace back. He's a guy that can't take on a bell cow workload, but when you limit his opportunity, he can be really explosive and he can have some really good games. And he kind of went on another tear at the end of the season. Travion Henderson, you obviously saw this towards the end of the year too. There was a little stretch where Ramondre Stevenson was hurt in the middle of the year where he went on like a 3-game tear. And then, every once in a while he would break away a 60-yard run, maybe do 2 in one game and score like 30 plus points. And it looked amazing. And a lot of times his floor was super, super low. Guess what? He was also in a running back committee all season. RJ Harvey was a guy who ended up kind of being thrust into a lead role once J.K. Dobbins went down with that season-ending injury. But if you recall, there was no slowing down for J.K. Dobbins before he went down with that injury and how Sean Payton wanted to utilize that backfield, and that was R.J. Harvey kind of being the change of pace back with some receiving capabilities. R.J. Harvey has a lot of, again, explosiveness in the receiving game. He was right there with Jaylen Warren in receiving yards per game, well beyond what Travion Henderson had, and that was a strength that we thought Henderson was going to have this season, and it just didn't really show consistently. But Harvey was so inconsistent and so inefficient on the ground that it just ended up being, again, low-end running back 2 worthy. This is the point of showing you all these metrics for all these running backs. For the young guys, the young sexy names in Harvey and Henderson compared to Jaylen Warren, this is the risk of Henderson and RJ Harvey. If you end up seeing a middle-of-the-road, like average annual salary running back in those respective offenses in New England and Denver, I would be really, really scared of what Henderson and Harvey's floors are there, because I think they're going to be pretty similar to what you saw their rookie season. So just be aware of that. If you are in the range of where Henderson is being priced right now in Dynasty, it is more often than not just worth you either down tiering to like Breece Hall or Judkins or Bucky, because they are all pretty much equally as risky, or just paying the extra premium to get a Hampton or a Genty or an Achan. That's just kind of our opinion there with a guy like Henderson and where he's priced. Harvey is quite a bit cheaper, like multiple rounds cheaper than Henderson. And if you're going to invest in one of those guys, again, I think Harvey is just a worse running back like a true runner than Henderson is. I think he's a true like 1B to a 1A in a Sean Payton offense. I think Henderson's upside, again, and this is why he's priced higher than Harvey,
100%.
is so much more expensive than Harvey, and I'm totally in support of that. I'm just saying at all of their respective prices right now for Harvey and Henderson, I think there are other guys in that range who are a little safer that you might want to invest in instead. Just recognize what the floor is with these guys and see an example like Jaylen Warren in Pittsburgh, where that just might be what ends up happening to either one of these guys in their offenses if they pay another guy.
And I think there are guys in that range with Harvey and Henderson both. And my point was, there are differences in between Harvey and Henderson, but part of the reason I put Harvey on there because it's like, if you like Henderson, like Harvey pretty much did the same thing last year. Like, why is Harvey not being elevated? Harvey's young. Harvey has higher draft capital. If that matters
I know
to you.
exactly why he didn't have the big flashy breakaway runs,
and
he was less efficient.
And again, if you're playing in a point per big flashy breakaway run league, then Travion Henderson, he's probably a league winner.
Like
in
massive big
format.
Play bonuses, right?
But most of us
that's
aren't.
pretty rare.
And so, like, the point of it is, like, I think there are guys, Travion Henderson, like, you can pivot to James Cook right now. That's a no-brainer, guys. Yeah. It's the guaranteed production. James Cook's what you want Henderson to be. Like, let's be honest, he's what you want Travion to be. So you can make that pivot. Like, you can pivot to any, even down tiering to Chase Brown or down tiering to any of these guys. Chase Brown is going to be as productive as Travion Henderson, and if he gets a second contract, look, we're talking about 2-year, 3-year outlook here. What's the difference? What's the difference? And so that's kind of the point of that one. Again, I'm not saying Travion is a huge sell, but I will say this. I'll be on record saying I'm very uncomfortable with Travion Henderson right now. Like, I don't love sitting on him.
This one is genuinely just kind of us trying to verbalize to you guys why we're not super often, especially in Blueprints, recommending that you go out of your way to purchase a Travion Henderson or an RJ Harvey, because this is kind of this is the mental process we're going through constantly with both of these assets because we don't really know what to do with them.
No, we don't.
Obviously, the reward, the potential upside for both of these guys seems to be great, but I think the floor, again, like we just showed, is so low. So be aware of the risk.
Yeah, there is risk, and again, we're keeping all of this in mind. Like Nate said, we're not recommending Travion on a ton of Blueprints because this is the kind of data that we're intaking on a day-to-day basis, and we're saying, okay, we should probably not recommend this guy as a buy because he's kind of a risky buy that if this plays out the way it does, he's kind of at his value ceiling, and maybe maybe we want to buy some guys with, more production at that same value ceiling. So again, we keep all of this in mind. If you want to get your team looked at and get a personalized plan for your Dynasty team this offseason, where we can tell you, hey, rebuild or contend. We can tell you, hey, this is what you should be doing with your players, selling these players and going and targeting these specific players that we've picked out for your specific team. You can get a personalized plan for your Dynasty team with our team Blueprint. You can get a Blueprint. You can also get the Blueprint Premium, which looks like this and is gorgeous with any annual Mother Flocker membership with code DOMAIN on flockfantasy.com. So again, you can check out the link in the pinned comment. You can get the free Blueprint. You can get everything that comes with the site. Our rankings, the Dynasty trade calculator. You can get the bakery database for all of the rookies we have. You can get in a domain league and play with us there as well. And so all kinds of stuff to be had over on the site. So go check it out. And again, if you join with code DOMAIN, Nathan and I take a look at your team. We do all these blueprints ourselves. It's personalized to your team and your league only so that you're getting the most specific advice you possibly can. And it's always good to have a plan for your Dynasty team. So just check it out. Let's do another blind resume here. Wide receiver number 1, 15.5 PPR points per game. Wide receiver 2, 15.2 PPR points per game. Wide receiver 1 finishes the wide receiver 27 in PPR leagues. Wide receiver 2 finishes the wide receiver 8. Wide receiver 1, 9 targets a game. Wide receiver 2, 7.3 targets per game. Wide receiver 1, a 24% target share. Wide receiver 2, a 29.5% target share. Wide receiver 1, 5.7 receptions per game versus 5.4. 82 receiving yards per game for wide receiver 1 versus 75.6. Receiving touchdowns, 0.2 versus 0.3. Yards per target, 8.4 versus 10.5. Yards per route run, 2.4 versus 2.66. And routes per game, 33 versus 27. Pretty dead even here across the board. What's the difference between these two wide receivers? The big glaring difference is wide receiver number 1 is ranked as the wide receiver 4 consensus on the Flock site. Wide receiver 2 is ranked as the wide receiver 20 on the Flock site. Wide receiver 1 is CeeDee Lamb, and wide receiver 2 is Zay Flowers. Now, I easily could have done this exact same. In fact, it would have been a lot worse if I did this. I could have done the same thing with Justin Jefferson. Yeah. And I could have plugged Jefferson in, and Jefferson wins like almost no categories here.
Yeah.
It's a 3-point per game difference between Jefferson and Zay Flowers.
You know what the glaring difference is between the two of those? One of them has Pickens, the other one doesn't.
And that's what I was going to get at.
Yeah.
In fact, another exercise that's good, and we can throw this on the screen as well, is when you plug CD Lamb into this comparison tool, which, by the way, you do get on the Flock site when you're a member, to Pickens. Pickens beats him in everything except for, actually, CD gets more targets per game, and technically 1% higher target share. But Pickens is averaging a lot more points. And when you're looking specifically at receiving touchdowns, Pickens is killing him there. He's doubling his touchdowns. And so, all that to say, are we selling CD Lamb in Dynasty? Probably not probably not at all, because with CD, like, there's as good a chance that Pickens goes as he stays. And if he goes, what's going to happen? We know what happens with CD in him, like by himself in this offense, with Dak Prescott. He's going to be extremely productive again. CD Lamb in 2024 was quite good. I mean, it was 2023 that he was really, but he was good in 2024 as well. Yeah. CD Lamb's had quite a few good years in the NFL. He averaged 17.6 points per game in all of 2024. In 2023, that number was 23.7 points per game. And so, we've kind of seen 3 straight years of decline now. But again, Pickens, we don't know what's going to happen with Pickens. Some people say they're going to use the tag on him. It's Jerry Jones and the Cowboys. You don't know what's going to happen with Pickens. You could guess all you want. The fact of the matter is, it is worth noting that with CD Lamb, if George Pickens comes back, you will have probably wished that you had pivoted from CD Lamb, because I can tell you right now, if I knew for a fact that Pickens was coming back to this offense, I'd much rather have an Amon-Ra St. Brown than a CD Lamb. Amon-Ra is ranked as the wide receiver 5 on the site. CD is ranked higher. I'd much rather have Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can tell you right now that if George Pickens, if I knew for a fact he's coming back to the offense, I'm trying to get Drake London maybe plus a little bit on top.
Yeah.
Those are the moves I'm looking to make if I know that George Pickens is going to be in that offense. Fact of the matter is, Lamb's production last year resembled somebody who, in typical Dynasty, and again, when you're talking about like age, Zay is younger than CD Lamb, right? Or they're very close to the same age. Zay was an older prospect, but regardless, like if you're looking at something similar next year, compared to what he put on the field last year for CD Lamb, I mean, it's Zay Flowers level numbers. He's not worth that level of investment in the first round. Now, again, I think you'd be selling a little bit low. I think it's kind of baked into his price that Pickens could come back. And so I don't necessarily think we're going to recommend to sell CD Lamb. But I will say this. If you are confident, which I'm not, I can't be confident in anything with the Cowboys. If you're confident, though, that George Pickens is going to be back in that offense, might I recommend you pivot to a guy in that range that is going to produce more?
Or even a small down tier, like you said, there are a number of cornerstone wide receivers who are a little bit cheaper than CD Lamb right now, where you can get a plus on top, and we don't really view that much of a difference between them.
So CD, just be advised, if Pickens comes back, it might end up being something.
Let me address one thing that a lot of people are going to talk about in the comments, and it's going to be, well, what do we do if Pickens is franchise tagged? And let me just tell you right now, franchise tag, a player can get tagged in March before the new league year begins, so that they basically kick the can down the road multiple months until they either find a trade partner or they actually get Pickens to sign an extension. Because I'm just telling you right now, Pickens is not a guy that's going to actually sign that tag. There ain't no way. And the Cowboys, if they are actually going to tag him, are not going to actually financially be able to play with that tag. That would be a franchise tag with the extent to, or with the intent to extend him, or with the intent to trade him. Right now, the cost on the cap this year for a wide receiver franchise tag is $28 million, and the Cowboys have $29 million in cap space total. That's it. So again, it's so easy for people to throw around the franchise tag word everywhere they want for players that they want to stay on one team or to make a situation a little more complicated. And the reality is, it is so rare for a player to play on the franchise tag because of all of the moving parts, salary cap wise, that happen on an annual basis for every single team in the NFL. Not to mention, if they want to create cap space, they're going to have to restructure contracts with Dak, Lamb, and Quinnen Williams, because those all three of those guys have massive cap hits on the Cowboys payroll this season. So just I wouldn't say that it's going to make it like even more complicated for the next 18 months if George Pickens ends up getting franchise tagged in March. I just think that it's going to be a drama saga for the next probably 3 to 4 months, and you're just going to have to be patient and wait. So keep that in mind. Just when you see franchise tag on George Pickens, it's not a done deal. Not yet. Not until it's signed or not until he's traded or extended. So next guys we have here is going to be another running back duo. Running back A averaged 15.4 points per game this season. He was only the running back 41. So again, if you see that gap there, that means he missed a little bit of time this year, actually quite a bit of time. And then running back B had 15.2 points per game, which was good for the running back 17. He really did not miss really hardly any time at all. When you're looking at their efficiency, player A was actually really inefficient this season at 3.39 yards per carry. And running back 2 was just under 4.8 yards per carry, which was one of the better seasons that I think we've seen from him. 3.8 targets, 3.89 targets for running back 1, only 3.2 targets for running back 2. So you had a decent gap there. Receiving yards, just under 31 receiving yards for running back A, and just under 20 receiving yards per game for running back B. So again, you're looking at those targets and those receiving yards. That's where running back A has the upper hand over running back B. But when you're looking at rushing efficiency, running back B has the upper hand. Total yards, it all kind of ends up coming out in the wash. 85.2 yards per game from scrimmage for running back A and 89.2 total yards per game from scrimmage for running back B. You've got who I believe, according to Flock consensus right now, is the running back 8 in Bucky Irving, and then the running back 23 in DeAndre Swift. You're talking about a 5-round gap between both of these guys, maybe a 4-round gap between these two running backs.
Yeah, depending on if Swifty goes in the 8th or the 9th round.
Yeah. So this is something that we've kind of alluded to a little bit this offseason. We've obviously spent a ton of time talking about how below average this 2026 rookie class is, specifically at the running back position. And if you remember last season in Chicago, the Bears tried aggressively to trade up and get Ashton Jency in the early first. It didn't work out. They tried aggressively to trade up and I believe get Travion Henderson or Judkins. New England and Cleveland didn't budge, so they were left with literally the best faller by far, who they definitely had a true first-round grade on and ended up drafting Burden. They wanted 3 different running backs in that class. They knew that class was talented. They knew it was very good. They knew that was going to be their best shot at getting like a big time difference maker in the run game. And they ended up having to ride it out with DeAndre Swift. And their run game was fine this season with that duo of Swift and Kyle Monangai. This season, I'm just telling you right now, they are, they can't get Jeremiah Love. They're either taking Jonah Coleman or Jadarian Price day 2, or they're not taking anybody. And I'm just telling you, there is no guarantee that they're taking one of those running backs, and there's no guarantee that they're replacing DeAndre Swift. I think one of the biggest indications here is when you're looking at the actual cap hit for DeAndre Swift in his contract this season, it's very, very reasonable in that it like the value, the contract was actually pretty well drawn out. Where they didn't like defer a ton of money to like the last year of his deal. He technically could be cut before the new league year, where they wouldn't owe him all this money. The dead cap is only $1.3 million, but they're going to pay him less than what they paid him in 2025 at $8.8 million this season. And he was a $9 million running back last year. He was. They're not going to get any other running back in free agency that costs $9 million and get the production output that Swift offered for them and has the skill set that he does, which is very unique in his receiving capabilities, his explosive run ability. Honestly, he's kind of a lot like Henderson, where his vision isn't very good, but he's just so athletic that he can kind of like a Walker.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, Walker is going to be more expensive than free agency, and he's going to be one of the biggest running back names, and he's not necessarily a better running back. He might be a little bit more athletic, but in terms of durability, question marks, and like vision as a runner, he's a little younger than Swift, but that's about it. They kind of would offer the same skill set, and Swift is a little better as a receiver. So Breece Hall, pretty much the only other guy in free agency that they could go get. Do they want to pay $15 to $17 million for Breece Hall, or just stick with this $8 million cap hit this year and hope that next year's running back class will be better when they can get a guy day 2 on a rookie deal? I'm just telling you right now, there's a decent chance that Swift ends up staying in Chicago, and that's pretty good for a situation with Ben Johnson. As far as Bucky Irving is concerned, I think we're just trying to tell you with Bucky Irving, like, he's being priced really, really high. And I think we've gone kind of back and forth with Bucky Irving's price for the last like 12 months, where we were like early last offseason, we were like, sell Bucky, sell Bucky, sell Bucky. And then we're like, okay, he's kind of priced at a in a fair range, and then he kind of got pushed down by default because of the talent of the running back class in 2025. So he just settled to a range that we were okay with. And then all of those shortcomings that we said, like, hey, you give him more volume, what's this going to look like? Are we going to see regression? It kind of all ended up coming true. But he was banged up for a good chunk of the season. So it's like, okay, well, will he come back healthy? Can he take on that bell cow workload and be fine? I'm worried about how they like to use Sean Tucker in the red zone at the end of the season once Bucky came back.
That's true.
There are a lot of concerns in Tampa's offense that I think a lot of people don't necessarily want to highlight, whereas they're just really obvious in Chicago, which is why that's driving down Swift's value right now.
Yeah.
And the reality is DeAndre Swift is going to be a relevant, decent production upside running back, like mid to high end running back too, for the next couple of years.
Yep.
And whether it's in Chicago or whether it's somebody else, this has been the case with Swift since he left Detroit. He just gets short contract extensions wherever he goes, and he ends up being, guess what, a running back too, like he has been his entire career.
Yep.
So this again, I'm not saying that Swift and Bucky Irving are equivalent, nothing like that. I'm just saying right now the production output that you're getting from Swift is pretty close to Bucky Irving. And if you can't, especially as a team that's looking to contend in 2026, if you can't afford to pay for a guy like Bucky Irving, just go take a way lower risk shot on a guy like Swift, who you know is going to be thrust into a role where he's getting a good amount of touches and is probably going to produce as a running back too again.
I would say it's more of a Swifty take than it is even a Bucky take. Because as concerning as it is with Bucky getting the Sean Tucker touches, I think Sean Tucker's cheeks. And so I think eventually Bucky's going to get back to getting
I really
most
do,
of that work.
I really
and he
do
played
think,
last year injured.
Yeah, I really do think Bucky's going to be fine. I question what his ceiling really is there. I do think he's probably, I think he's being valued close to what his ceiling is at running back 8 with all obviously these younger running backs coming in. But I don't know. I think he's fine. Like, I don't think he's a bad investment.
I've seen him go in the 3rd round in drafts, and that's where I'm out. But I see him go in the mid-late 4th, and I'm like, okay, Bucky's not a bad pick.
I've seen him sniff 5th, and once he gets to 5th, that's where I'm taking I am A-okay.
So I wouldn't say that's
Bucky.
necessarily a Bucky take. That's more of a Swifty take. And again, if you invest in Swift and he goes back to the Bears, win. If he goes somewhere else, win. If Breece Hall goes to the Bears, win. If Kenneth Walker goes to the Bears, win. If Jabarian Price or Jonah Coleman, who we love, go to the Bears, win. There's not a scenario here with Swifty where you lose. There just isn't. And so that's kind of the point of that one. Tight end. You can get scammed at tight end all the this is a scam. So, and I'm going to get into the full
tight end's always a scam.
Tight end is a scam.
Always a scam unless you have a top 2 tight end.
That's 100% correct, dude. Tight end number 1. Tight end number 1 is was the tight end 8 on the year. Tight end number 2 is the tight end 12. They're both tight end 1s, both low end tight end 1s. 11.8 point versus 11.2 points per game, favoring tight end A. The first tight end here averaged 7 versus 6.38 targets per game. 21% target share versus 18% target share. But tight end 2 had more receptions and receiving yards here. They both had not very many touchdowns at all. And then tight end 2 also had more yards per target and more yards per route run. Tight end number 1 ran more total routes by 0.25 routes per game, essentially identical. These guys have extremely similar profiles. But what's the difference? You know the difference. The difference is that the first tight end is priced as a tight end 4 in Dynasty, a 4th or 5th round pick.
And the other tight end is free.
And you can get him off. I mean, not waivers, but you could trade a 3rd or 4th in this year's really, really terrible class for this guy. Because tight end A is Tyler Warren, and tight end B is Juwan Johnson. Now, that's not to say Juwan Johnson's going to do next year what he did this year, but what's the point of this? The point is what we saw production-wise from Tyler Warren in his rookie year, that level, that 11.8 to 12, really like 11 to 13 point per game output from tight ends, you can get that anywhere. Any given year, there is a guy that is free that is producing at 11 to 12.
You got it from Jake Ferguson. You could insert Dallas Goedert here. You could insert Brenton Strange, Harold Fannin, and Gadsden, who are both cheaper than him.
Goedert, 12.3 points per game. Brenton Strange, 10.7 points per game. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean,
Theo Johnson.
Theo Johnson was good for a stretch there too. I'm just saying this, like, and just the brief history. We spent all of last year's draft season saying, oh my gosh, you have to draft Tyler Warren because he was being priced so low.
It's so predictable with younger tight ends when they start producing at any level whatsoever. If you remember what we said word for word, we said if Tyler Warren produces at 75% of the level that Brock Bowers did his rookie season, it's an instant value win guaranteed.
And guess what? He went up 3 to 4 rounds in value. And you've got a huge value. So we went from, okay, we got to buy Tyler Warren. We don't even, we're Colts fans. We're trying not to be Colts fans, but buy Tyler Warren to Tyler Warren looked really good at the end of the season. They were being very, or at the beginning of the season, they were being very intentional about getting him involved. To whereas the season went on, like
he tapered off.
And a lot of guys got involved there, including Alec Pierce, like more in the middle of the field than we thought. And obviously you have potentially Michael Pittman leaving that offense, which could leave a void that Tyler Warren could fill with more production.
Yes.
100% agree with that. But I think with Warren in the Colts offense, having watched the Colts every week for the past 20 years,
he is the afterthought in the best way possible from a scheme perspective because he's the luxury item. He's not the guy that they're like, we have to constantly get him targets.
Yeah. And he's the luxury item on your fantasy roster too. And so I won't even spend a lot of time with this one. My point is this. You want to win your league? You want to win Dynasty leagues? I'll tell you how to do it. Instead of rostering Tyler Warren, why don't you down tier to any of George Kittle, who's a great buy right now. Kyle Pitts, who was producing at, in terms of where he was producing last year, he was averaging 13.2 points per game. And he's 4 rounds cheaper. Rondé Gadsden, who we're high on. Tucker Kraft, who's a great buy low off of injuries. Right? Those guys. Harold Fannin even. Like Harold Fannin, why are we not talking about, why is Harold Fannin not being valued next to Tyler Warren? Harold Fannin averaged 11.7 points per game. They have identical production profiles. Don't get scammed at tight end. If you don't have an elite team, you shouldn't have a tight end price this way anyways. But these middle-of-the-road tight ends are what kill you.
Talk about it in startup value, too, in the production output that you're getting. Would you rather have Tyler Warren and Jalen Wright, or would you rather have Breece Hall and Juwan Johnson?
Not even close.
It's not even remotely
not even close, dude.
It's not even close.
Look at the production gap between Wright and Breece Hall versus the production gap between Warren and Johnson.
Insert Bucky.
There's not a production gap there. And then you're getting plus how many? Like this, it's a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer if you own a tight end like this. Either go to the top 2 tight ends or do nothing at tight end, and it will pay off. Everything in between is a scam in Dynasty. We'll die on that hill, even in tight end premium leagues to some extent, but obviously it changes with the rules. Let's do our last one here.
Last couple of fun comps here. Wide receiver 1 averaged 9.8 points per game, and wide receiver 2 finished with 11.5 points per game. When you're looking at the target share, there was only a 2% gap between player 1 and player 2. Receptions, they were right neck and neck. Receiving yards, neck and neck. Yards per target, 8.33 to 8.3. I mean, these guys are essentially twins. And player 2 actually ran 6 less routes per game than player 1 did. This is Ricky Pearsall as player 1, and player 2 is Parker Washington. This one was kind of funny. We're trying to be a little petty here because we historically have been like the biggest anti-Ricky Pearsall guys of all time.
Just wait till he hits, dude. When he's 28?
Dude, he's already like 26
He's going to be 26 when the season starts.
Yeah, by the time he hits his like opportunity to get a second rookie contract as a first-round guy, that's if they pick up his 5th-round option, which they won't. He'll be 28 years old trying to get his first big contract. This dude is one of the worst Dynasty investments as a top 100 ADP level guy. Like, why in the world?
Oh, you're going to regret it, Nathan.
Jordan Addison, Travis Etienne, get short-term league winners and Derrick Henry and Devontae Adams take him over Pearsall.
Well, you literally have a guy in Ricky.
Would you rather win your league with Henry and Adams or put Pearsall on your bench for half the season because he's always hurt?
Talk about price, man. Devontae Adams in Dynasty, these guys are ranked as the wide receiver 30 and 34, and one of them averaged 16 points per game. The other one averages 9.8. Yeah. It's just Ricky Pearsall is a scam. That is the one true scam we're putting on this video. Scam. All right, make sure you drop a like on this video. Make sure you're subscribed, of course, if you play Dynasty. And again, we gave our individual opinions on each of these players, but this video was not, I'll clarify, not sell this player for this player. That's not the point of this video. It will never be our advice. In fact, a lot of these videos, like CeeDee Lamb, we don't even have as a sell necessarily. But it's all facts. So I hope you can handle the facts. Obviously, we want to be as objective as we can but a lot of people can't handle the truth, dude. A lot of people drafted Ricky Pearsall on rookie drafts, and they won't let go. Cut your losses and move on. All right, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. See you soon.